Started the recording.
Okay, wonderful.
Yep, it's 11:30. I don't know if you want to wait 2 minutes or if you want to get started, up to you.
That's actually up to you. I don't know how these have been running each day.
We do have just the 30 minutes, so maybe we should get started.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and get started. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so thank you for having me on this call today. My name is MB Gustitus. I am out of the Nashua Market Center, Salem Business Center, and I'm the OP there. And I was asked to do shift tactic number 7, which I think is such an important tactic in this book, pricing ahead of the market, seller pricing strategies. So we are in the shift book if you have it there. And I thought that I would open up today with I think is an excellent quote on page 135 in the shift book. And that is, the ability to learn faster than your competition may be the only sustainable competitive advantage that you have. And right now, perfect timing. I just had this conversation with me about 30 minutes ago, a scenario that she was not familiar with. And she said a seller came to her, a buyer came to her from Zillow today and said, we know the house is listed at, for example, we'll say 270, but we think it's now only worth 250. And I said, that is exactly the conversation that we're going to be having today in this shift session, which is pricing and pricing ahead of the market, because the world has changed kind of immediately. And we're in a period right now that feels a little like the Twilight Zone, right? We're having these conversations around shift and what's coming, and yet we're experiencing that our listings are still selling quickly. We're still having multiple offers. We're still having a lot of activity. So it can feel like a false positive. And so this tactic is one that really has to be tended to and for us to get ahead of it, all right? So again, I'm starting on page 135, and the comments that I wanted to pick out from this particular page are, the result of a shift in the market is that buyers start to get a little fearful. So by a thumbs up, have any of you that I can see on the screen, have you started to experience buyers that have said, I'm not sure, I'm fearful?
Yes.
A lot of thumbs are going up. Okay. So they get fearful. The next thing that happens is they start to get picky. They start to become a little bit more cautious and picky. And ultimately what will happen is that there are fewer that come through the funnel, right? We talk about the funnel, which are the buyers and sellers that come in and how many pop out the bottom. The funnel gets more narrow. So right now we're in the part, we're still kind of stuck in fear, right? Uncertainty, what's going to happen. So we need to know what's going to happen next so that you're already there looking back and waiting, so that you're preparing your buyers and sellers in the best light. On page 136, I think this is an excellent way to explain a market shift to a buyer and a seller. Now, Gary in the book, and I'm just going to read this really quickly, but I thought, boy, if you're sitting in front of a buyer or a seller, particularly a seller right now, to help them understand the impact of a shift, this is a great story. I find when we are trying to get people to reach a decision or trying to get them to see a concept, to give an example that is outside of real estate that they're not so emotionally attached to, and then bring it back into real estate can be really helpful. So this right in the middle of the page, I'm on 136, Gary Keller explains the market shift as this. At the bar exam, 3 different would-be attorneys forget their pen. One asks the test proctor if he has an extra pen. He does, but only one. So 3 people need the pen, and there's only 1 pen available. The first attorney says, I'll give you $1. The second attorney says, I'll give you 2. And the third attorney says, I'll give you $3 for that 1 pen that's available. Little time passes. The next time the bar exam comes, they make sure they have lots of pen available, right? By this time, all the proctors have heard that they should bring extra and that they can make a lot of money selling pens. Well, this time, only one attorney forgot to bring their pen. First proctor says, I'll sell this pen to you for $3 because he got $3 the last time. The second one said, guess what? I'll sell it to you for $2. And the third said, I'll give it to you for $1. That is a great way to share the analogy to a seller who thinks they are still able to sell their pen for $3. Does that make sense, guys? Give me a thumbs up or a head bob if it's true. Awesome. So that in effect is supply and demand right there. Buyer's market, seller's market right there. Who has the leverage? Now, when we look at this idea of right now, we are in a sort of a transition. I'm going to call it, it can feel like the Twilight Zone again, where perceptions don't align. Sellers have a perception of what their home is worth and what the market looks like. Buyers have a very different perception now of what the market looks like and where it's going. So if we look at this idea of window of opportunity, that and it will shift. We have to understand that when you're dealing with sellers, this is a very tricky time. And understanding that their mindset, where they're at, what they believe, has sort of been ripped out from under them. And I often use the idea that in a shifting market, the buyer's view, if we're driving a car, the buyer's view is the windshield, right? Where we're going. And their view right now is the market's gonna come down. The market's gonna crash. They have all these perceptions about what's going to happen with pricing in the market. All right, so they're looking out the windshield. Where is it going? And what speed at which will it get there? The sellers, however, are looking in the rearview mirror, okay? My neighbor got X. They had multiple offers. They sold quickly. During this time of equilibrium where we're settling in and we're figuring it out, there's a lot of emotion from the seller side that generally has to do with us. Would you agree? By a show of hands here, who has ever been through a market shift before? Okay, I see some hands here. So you may remember in the last shift, we had to go through a process where the sellers weren't really believing us. They weren't believing that market, that they had to price it differently, that they had to take price reductions, or that they may have to take potentially a lower offer that came through the door. Their perception didn't yet line up with reality. And on page 137, it talks about the 5 stages, kind of the 5 stages of grief, but it's also the 5 stages of getting real with where this market is right now. A changing market, our ability, this is now about skill. Okay, and I think on many of these calls, Brad Knowles had said, I'm going to slaughter it, so forgive me, Brad, if you're listening, but basically, Brad had said, that when the tide goes out, it exposes who's been swimming naked. Did I get that right, Joanne? Kinda. She doesn't know. She's like, you're crazy. So, so here, what that means is that in a market that's moving at a quick pace, that the sellers are in control, the market's appreciating, we don't need a lot of skill to price, because the market will catch it. The market will make up for it. So if we're a little bit out of bounds on a pricing strategy, the market will correct it. When we're going in the other direction, every day we're out of bounds on our pricing strategy, we get further and further out of bounds. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. I'm just checking my, Joanne told me to make sure I keep checking my, I don't know what you're telling me.
That was, no, I'm not going to tell, I was asking Brad.
Oh, okay. Well, you texted it to me.
I lied.
That's crazy.
Sorry.
Okay.
Let's get
back.
back.
Okay, let's get back. Okay. So right now in a changing market, this is from the shift right there on page 137, I believe. Changing market It is a skill and a science. Pricing is now critical. Again, a day that you are incorrectly priced in a buyer's market is a day you're out of bounds even further. A shift changes the direction and speed at which the buyer thinks prices are going. We didn't hear 2-3 weeks ago buyers saying, you know what, let me wait. I think the prices might go up. Right? We didn't hear that. Now suddenly you might hear buyers saying, you know what, I'm going to wait because I think the prices are going to go down. We had an example just today of a buyer that said, you know what, I know it's listed at 270, but I think I can make a deal at 250. That's the direction and the speed at which the buyers will believe this market is changing based on current condition. The science in pricing is observation, right? That's what we know in the Shift book. Science is observation. So that is to say, what do I observe already happening in the market? Our comparables, looking at what the market is already doing based on fact. The skill part comes in our ability to predict what will happen next. So we need both science, right? We need now both science and art. Okay, so what's happening and what do I think will happen next? What's our interpretation of the market? The struggle that we find, oftentimes the real struggle in the beginning of a shift, is dealing with perceptions. Dealing with the perceptions of the, ooh, that got loud. Somebody's walking. Joanne, can you mute that? Okay, thanks. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So the biggest struggle we have in a shift truly is the ability to manage perceptions, buyer perceptions, seller perceptions, and our own perceptions. Back to my book here, see what else I've highlighted. Yeah, I have all kind of notes here. If you guys have questions, just put in the chat box and we'll make sure to address them as best we can. One thing to remember in a shift is that the buyer will often make offers in anticipated market drop. That's what we saw today happen in real life just an hour ago. Buyers want to make an offer based on where they think the market will be in a week or a month or more. When we look at, this is the most important thing. Joanne, can I share my screen real quick?
Sure.
Okay, so let's see. I pulled these out of the shift classes. And what I just want to do here, and I remember, guys, I remember using these exact slides in 2008. I can still see myself standing in front of a class teaching people how to use these slides, and they're as appropriate now as they have ever been. So get very familiar with having a conversation with your sellers and using this information, using these charts. Basically, when we look at pricing strategies, we have to realize that there's a tale of two markets that go on. They go on all the time, truly. And those, the two markets that exist are those that want to sell and those that are going to sit. Now, every market has two markets in them always. What we find is that when a market's shifting from a seller's to a buyer's market, the worlds just get further apart, okay? And so when we look at this particular chart, this is how we could explain to a seller, this is the reality that we've been living in for a long time, right? And the fact of the matter is, the market, what is considered to be market value, is based on a property being priced, and we can see, let me see if I can move my little mousey here. We can see that this is a property that's priced below market and at or above market, right? So price and condition, there's a big space, meaning the market's going to take pretty much anything. Big market, big volume, big area. Which means the seller kind of decides what they're going to get. There's a very small few that are peripheral that aren't going to be successful. Here's what happens in a shift. So starting with this slide is a good slide to sort of say, I understand that this has been your experience. I understand that this for quite a long time has been the right perception. Let me share with you what actually happens in a shift. And we're going to then move to the next slide. And this is a slide of a constricted market. when suddenly there are fewer buyers that are out there. We talked about that in the beginning of the call. There will be fewer buyers. The market is constricted. And here we're going to say, in this new world, right? The market, only those that are priced the most aggressively and those that are will be absorbed into the market. I used to say that in a buyer's market, it becomes a beauty pageant and a price war at the same time. And they need to compete on both fronts. Okay? Price war and a beauty pageant at the same time. Now, if I look at the third slide, this sort of explains what is a no man's land. Now, we're gonna find a lot of these happening as well. And this is where the properties that are coming on, the sellers are saying, let's just try it. Agents have not yet adjusted to the idea that the market has shifted. So they're still leaving the seller the option of where to position it. They're not paying attention. This no man's land starts to widen. Now we can sort of tell whether something is in the market, which means you're going to get an offer pretty darn quickly. Out of the market means you're not getting any offers and you're not getting any showings and you're not getting any activity. You are out of the market at that point. When you're in no man's land, that is a house that is positioned just on the outskirts of market, meaning you're probably getting some inquiries, you're probably going to get some showings, but you're not going to get an offer. That's no man's land. So when you explain to the seller how we're positioning, you need to tell them the evidence that you're priced correctly will be based on the immediate activity that we get, right? NAR used to say, if we have 2 weeks with no offers or 10 offers with no showings, we are not positioned correctly. The other thing I want to caution you on, when we are having a conversation around pricing in a buyer's market, knowing that or a shift market, not a shipping market, it's fluid, I want us to change our language around price. And I want us to consider using the word position instead. Where your home is positioned means it is subject to change. And as real estate agents, we need to be completely laser focused on what the market is doing each and every day. And I'm going to share with you some of those things, and it is in your shift book as well. Let me see here. I'll let you look at your. People would like me to share my slides. Okay, yep, happy to share the slides. They're also, yeah, I'll share the slides. The pen analogy, what pen analogy?
The one about the attorneys.
Oh, okay, that's actually in your shift book. You already have it, my darlings, you already have it. It is on page number 136 in your shift book. Page 136 in your shift book is the pen analogy. Thanks, I already forgot it. Okay. Now, the other thing that's going to open up is this conversation. I know we have about 10 minutes left. The conversation around overpriced listings. Now, in a fast-moving, aggressive seller's market, that's kind of like a, what is that, right? Nobody has overpriced listings. They all sell. Nobody has expired listings. That doesn't exist. Nobody has, you know, again, pricing. Nobody has to ask for a price reduction. That's not a problem. And so now there are all of these things that are going to come up. And one of the chapter talks about as agents, do we take an overpriced listing or do we not take overpriced listings? So if we're sitting down with a seller, not in agreement to position market, what are the pros and cons of? There are two schools of thought. We don't get to tell you what's the right answer. It's whatever the right answer is for you. Some agents feel very strongly that if the seller, oh, well, goodness, bless whoever that was. Where am I now? So if a seller in their conversation is deeming that they are going to be positioned out here, they will not take the. Some will say, if you know, depending on where they fall in here, I may or may not take the listing. Here's what you have to know. the con of taking an overpriced listing is that it takes time and money. It takes also your evidence of being successful. If I am going up against an agent, the first thing I do are statistics. So if you are a overpriced listings that take your days on market to be longer, or your average sale ratio down, just be aware that's information they may be using against you. If you are strong with your pricing strategy, that becomes then a great tool for you to share in your listing presentation, right? Mr. Seller, I am able to sell the homes X% faster than MLS, and I'm able to X% higher list to sell price. So just know that that is a conversation. The other school of thought is, well, every listing, if I market it correctly, should bring me buyer leads. And so some agents will feel like, unless someone is really out in the stratosphere over here, I'll probably take it. And I'll probably then be able to at least secure some buyer leads from it. Your choice. In the Shift book, it said based on all the studies that they did, they found that there was a good case and argument for either side. You decide what is best for you. Mike Mendoza in this book has a quote. He says, "The home has the most value the single day it goes on the market." So when you are in a seller's market, my son just interrupted us. Okay, I heard the door creaking. Sorry if you did. That when you are in a shifting or a buyer's market, please understand that home has the most value the day it hits. It does not get stronger from there. A couple of things that work with your market center leadership to get clear on, and that you want to make sure you understand in a shifting market, is something called activity index. Activity index says what's the rate at which people are doing something, and that is by taking your the active listings on the market plus pending listings, right? Take that number, and then you're going to divide it by the total number pending. That's going to give you an activity index, and that tells you how fast things are coming on and being absorbed. The second thing you must know and work with your market center leadership to get clear on this is what the absorption rate currently is. The absorption rate basically says if not another home came available to the market, how many months of inventory supply do I have? Okay. Now, as that absorption rate starts to go higher, months of inventory goes higher, that means more inventory is sitting and there's less buyer demand. Okay. So make sure you work with your leadership team to understand activity index and absorption rate, what those are, what they mean. Right now, more than ever, go back to your listing presentations and update them. Most of us have learned language and conversation specific to appreciating market, fast moving, strong seller market. So these scripts and dialogues could be completely foreign to you, right? So we have to know today's words, yesterday's words don't work in today's world. So you need new scripts and new dialogues to understand where we are and how to communicate that. Make sure that you're using evidence and visual aids. This is not a time to come in with opinion, whether we're working with a buyer or a seller. This is a time that we need to come in with facts and evidence and data. We need to be able to use care and candor in talking to buyers and sellers. And that means we need to be confident in what we know. And we need to be able to deliver the truth, which isn't always what they're going to want to hear right now. And to be able to deliver it in a way that they can receive it, and they can understand it, and ultimately they can accept it. Find their motivation. If a seller has no reason to sell in a shifting market, you might find that you're taking listings, not sellers, right? Our job is to separate and find the motivated. So make sure that they have a real motivation for selling. Where are they going? Why are they going there? What is most important for them right now? And again, the biggest thing I can say to you is to make sure that you are learning the conversations that are relevant right now, the conversations that are relevant today. And they are very different than they were just a week or two ago. The wonderful thing is that you are in a place where we have all of those tools for you. You simply just need to plug in. If you have your shift book, I want you to turn, please, to page 156. This is the last page. And this is 7 maxims for pricing in a shifted market. So 7 things that we need to make sure that we are understanding and that we are taking action on. So I'll go through these 7 very quickly. Number 1, be a student of your market. Know your numbers now more than ever. This is not an order taker market. This is not open the door and the rest works out market. Now more than ever, be a student. Understand the market and what those numbers mean. Work with your leadership teams for that. Number 2, focus your main comps on actives and pendings. In a market that's moving quickly, right? The things that have sold may already be out of date. So active meaning, what do the buyers of right now have to choose from? Make sure that I'm positioned fairly in that. Pendings mean what is the market? So make sure we pay attention to that. Be a student of property. You should be out previewing properties, understanding what's moving, what's not moving. Where do people find value right now? Number 4, keep your presentation as current as possible. Let your ongoing research do the talking, which means you need to pay attention. We need to pay attention to the market daily and update our conversation daily if needed. Number 5 is to pre-qualify for motivation. Again, why are they deciding that now is the right time for them to sell? Number 6, about pricing ahead of the market and not chasing it. There's a lot of conversation right now where people are saying go out and get price reductions. Now, we're kind of feeling like that's ridiculous because a lot of our properties are still selling over multiple offers. It doesn't feel like that's an appropriate thing to do. But remember, right now we're dealing on the lag and sort of the tailwind of life pre-COVID. New listings coming on, we may have to get very aware of price of market if things start to sit. And the last one is to always secure price reductions in advance to avoid falling behind the market. So when we look here, right, when we look here at the slides and know that we might be, if we're on the cusp a week from now, this may suddenly be, right, it suddenly may move our position to no man's land. So we need to have a strategy in place. Again, your leadership team at your market centers can help you through it, but to say that we will X on a basis, so some give thought to and give pause to. I think, yes.
Marybeth, hi. We only have like 1 or 2 minutes left, and people are asking for you to repeat the formula for the activity rate index and the absorption rate. Okay,
happy to do it. Activity index is when you take the total number of actives plus pendings and you divide it by pendings.
So actives plus pendings divided by pendings.
Yep. And that's the activity rate. It's basically saying for all the properties that are available, how quickly is it moving? Absorption rate, which is how many months of inventory do we have, where you're going to take the number of active homes on the market, right? What could somebody pick? And you're going to divide it by how many homes have sold in the last 30 days. Now, if you're using like a CMA toolkit or even your MLS, quite oftentimes, or broker metrics, they have that data for you, or it's already calculated, needed to find it longhand. That's how you would do it. You would look at number of how many have sold in the last 3 months. And if this at this pace continues, where 50 are coming off the market, and I've got 200 on the, on the shelf in inventory, I have 4 months of inventory there. We know when we talk about buyer market, seller market, right? You guys remember this? Anything over, we say over 6 months is considered to be a buyer's market. Anything under 6 months is considered to be a buyer's market, or moving in one direction or the other. Okay. Any other questions we have?
You can unmute and ask questions. Oh, I am unmuted. You can unmute and ask questions if you'd like. We have about 1 minute left.
Could you just repeat, over 6 months is a buyer market, under 6 months is a seller market? Is that what you said?
That's what I said. Yep.
Okay.
Generally. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The problem we've been having is we've been living in such tight conditions with inventory, where we've been living on a month and a half, 2 months for some time. That's why it feels so tight, such a small inventory. As that continues to grow, right, and the buyer demand maybe starts to trail off a bit, or they become scared, and then they get picky, and then they decide it's not the right time. So we may have fewer to be on the market at all.
How would you define the value to a client of absorption rate?
How would I define the value to a client based on absorption rate? Is that your question?
Oh, in the presentation of saying to them, the absorption rate is this, what would you say to them, other than saying, well, if the absorption rate is high, then market costs aren't staying on, so the value is probably higher, correct? How would you explain to a client the value?
Okay, so again, I would get very clear on why do they want to sell and when do they want to sell. And I would say, based on the inventory we have right now, it's showing us that we have about 4 months supply of inventory. For you to be, let's just say there's 300 homes on the market. The market is only absorbing 50 homes a month based on MLS data. What do we think we need to do to be one of the 50 that the market will choose, right? Which means we need to be positioned the most aggressively, and we need to show in the best light. Think price war and beauty pageant at the same time. So when we use market absorption rate, it basically means the higher the absorption rate, the more they need to be the more they need to be here, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And think of other ways too that you can explain how for them to be the best selected, right? So I used to always say as well, imagine that you're in a grocery store and imagine that you're looking to buy an apple and you have 3 apples to choose from and they're all priced the same. And one apple is perfectly shined. It has no dents. It really looks to be, in great condition. And the other 2 may not be. Which apple do you pick?
Can I ask you a question about some pricing strategy if the market is dropping this way? So if you're looking and basing your comps now on active and pending, do you jump ahead and say, at the rate that we're going, I'm suggesting you price X% below where we are right now?
I think that certainly can be done. I think we have to just, again, go back and say, what is the seller's motivation? If they need to sell quickly, yes, go below. I would say that when we're looking at, the reason why we want to say look at pending, right? Where did the market go pending? Is because that's the market that has been successful. We can put anything on market for whatever we want, right? We can price something for whatever we want, and it doesn't mean that the person who positioned it really understood the market. So going by what's actively on the market only shows their competition. When you're going to consult with the seller to say, this is where the market seems to be biting. Think of it like we're going fishing, right? We're going to go fishing. Active means this is all the fish that are in the lake. Okay? Pending means this is fish are biting. Okay? Think of it like this. If we go to this part of the lake, this is where the fish, all the fish are going. This is where they're kind of hovering, and this is where they're biting. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Joanne, we're at 12:04. How'd we do, guys?
I think we did okay. We have one more quick question. Do you have 2 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, and this will be the last question. We're over time already. What is the cause of this shift, the virus and/or the underwriting guidelines getting a little tougher?
I think it's many things. I think it's many things, and I think there are things that are still yet to come we don't even know. I think right now the immediate halt is the uncertainty. I think COVID for sure put the world in such a state of uncertainty. I think because of that, now we have uncertainty in the job market, right? We have uncertainty in the stock market. We have uncertainty in the lending market. COVID, and here's the thing we have to understand, guys. COVID won't be here for very long, right? Like we hope. But the results of the effects of COVID may. I don't think it's all going to come back the minute we get to leave our homes again and go to restaurants and hug our families again. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that COVID started a shift that I think now is a shift. And Gary Keller has also said this is not going to be a short-term thing. And what I want us to know as real estate agents is this is nothing for you to be afraid of. It's something for you to be prepared for. It's something for you to understand this is happening, right? It's happening. Get real about it. Learn how to explain it. Learn how to have the conversation around it. And as I say to my market center, the number in the market is never zero, ever. It will never be zero. So we don't need to worry about, can I make a living? We need to worry about, can I change my strategy? Can I change my conversations? Can I change, how I'm languaging all of this and change my behavior? If you do that, you're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine. But you got to be different, right? You got to be different. And if you're not willing to be different, you may have some struggles.
Are we all set? Are we all set now? Okay, Marybeth, I think this is good. Thank you so much for doing this for us all today.
My pleasure. I hope everybody got something from it. I appreciate that you all joined on.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye.